Good afternoon. Welcome to our live online debate. My name is Tomasz Żylicz. I am a Climate for Growth campaign coordinator. With me here today is Professor Tomasz Żylicz from the Faculty of Economic Sciences at the University of Warsaw. And we will be talking today about energy efficiency and also about the issue of backloading, which is being debated at the European level here today. The debate will last for an hour. If you are watching us, you are on our website. In the live debate section, you can post your questions or comments to our debate guest by using the hashtag #ClimateForGrowth in your tweets. Your tweets will appear underneath the video feed, and our guest will respond and will make his views known. So welcome, thank you for joining us, and please maybe a few words about yourself and your views.
It's not really very relevant to comment on my background, which is in environmental economics, but I would like to focus from the very beginning on the climate protection and on the economics of climate protection. From that point of view, unfortunately, we are not very successful. We have failed to protect the global climate over the last 20 years or so. In 1992, the global emission of carbon dioxide was something like 25 billion tons. Now we have the emission of 35 billion tons, which means a 40% growth over the last 20 years. Many of my European colleagues say that, unfortunately, the emissions of carbon dioxide have been growing despite what we did. And I say, no, it's not despite what we did, but it's because of what we did. And to be more specific about in what sense we failed in protecting the global climate, I must say that we unfortunately accepted an agreement in 1995 at the Conference of Parties #1, the first Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The agreement is now nicknamed Berlin Mandate because it was agreed upon in Berlin. And the Berlin Mandate says that only the Annex I countries will take commitments to limit the carbon dioxide emissions until the end of the world. And non-Annex I countries will not take any commitments until the end of the world. The point is that the Annex I countries account for less than half of all the emissions right now, and some of the non-Annex I countries, I mean more than 50 non-Annex I countries, are wealthier than the least wealthy of the Annex I countries. So the initial philosophy behind the Berlin Mandate, that let the rich do something, let the rich do the penance for what wrong they did in the 19th century, is not environmentally effective, because the carbon dioxide emissions grow not in the Annex I countries. Here the emissions are more or less stable. They do grow in non-Annex I countries, and the more we do in the Annex I, the worse for the climate protection, because the non-Annex I countries' emissions keep growing, and we postpone the moment of convening a truly global agreement. So as long as by doing something in Annex I we create an impression that we are moving, the climate will not be protected, because it's not the Annex I who are responsible for the present failure. It's the lack of the global agreement on the global carbon dioxide emissions, which kills the idea of the climate protection.
But we've just finished the COP19 in Warsaw. Maybe we are moving closer to a global agreement, an effective global agreement.
Maybe. I hope for that, because unless we have such a global agreement, we cannot think of protecting the global climate, and we cannot think of saving Maldives or some other small island states in the Pacific Ocean, whose predicament is really dramatic. So we pretend that we do something, and in fact in many countries, including in Poland, the emissions have been declining, but at the same time the global emissions grow at an ever-growing pace. And this is really disturbing somebody like myself who is concerned about the climate protection, not about doing something or promoting renewables or serving my own economy or something, but for people who are concerned with the climate protection, unfortunately, we are not progressing, and this causes a concern.
So what is the best way of reducing this? I mean, obviously, the world is recovering from an economic downturn in the last years. What do you think is the way forward? Is energy efficiency, should this be one of the top priorities in climate policy?
The energy efficiency may help a little bit, but the main point is that we need a global agreement, and we need all the major emitters, most of whom are now out of the Annex 1, to accept certain limits on their emissions. So we may proceed with energy efficiency in Europe, but this does not translate into declining emissions globally. The emissions may decline locally in Europe, but as you know, Europe accounts for just something like maybe 11, maybe 12% of the global emissions. So you see that our direct effect of progress in Europe is limited. So the direct effect is limited, and indirect effect is detrimental, because the longer we pretend that we do something, the more we postpone the moment to get rid of the Berlin Mandate and to start limiting the global carbon dioxide emissions, not just the emissions from the Annex 1, which are not quite relevant anymore.
But after COP19, for the first time in history, both Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries have declared that they will work towards pledging.
Yeah. So this is promising, and I think that the global community is now more aware than in the past about the need for a global agreement, and I trust that we are closer to such a global agreement. But one thing I would like to stress when we talk about the global agreement, namely that we should look and we should struggle for absolute emission limits, not for relative emission limits. For instance, many of us are enthusiastic about Chinese declarations that they would decrease the energy efficiency of their GDP by 40% by a certain date. But this is commendable, of course. But on the other hand, the projected growth of GDP in China is something like 300% or maybe more. So even though they may achieve a much better energy efficiency over the next 20 or 40 years or something, When it comes to absolute emissions, the absolute emissions will be growing. And I think I understand the mechanism, and I think as an economist I can explain what's happening, but as an environmentalist I'm concerned about people in Bangladesh or people in Maldives who are really exposed to the climate change and global warming and stuff like that. So unless we constrain the global carbon dioxide emissions, then we cannot think of protecting the global climate. We will do something. We may be happy about doing something. We may feel better that we have been doing something, but this is not the same as protecting the climate.
Well, I mean, Europe has for many years tried to be the champion of climate growth, tried to lead by example in terms of emission reductions, in terms of renewables, in terms of energy efficiency. What are your views on this? I mean, how successful has Europe been?
Well, first of all, Europe has not been successful. So indeed, we have played the role of a leader for a number of years, but we failed to inspire the rest of the world. And we have to learn this lesson. One of the reasons that we failed to inspire the global community is that providing a good example is a perfect method of raising children. So if you want to have your children acquire certain values or life patterns or what have you, then you may provide a good example for your children. And this is a very good way of raising your children. However, the international negotiators, and I've been a part of this negotiating process as well, the global negotiators are not like children. They cannot be, or they will not be inspired by your good example. So they are looking for immediate costs and benefits, and they act accordingly. So in particular, when they find it profitable to do something, they will do it, despite what you are trying to inspire them with. And the second reason that Europe failed as a leader of climate protection is that some years ago, many economists and many politicians believed that the technological progress triggered by our unilateral action to increase the carbon price and to promote renewables and so on will be so fast and so successful that non-Annex I countries like China, India, Brazil, or what have you, will adopt these low-carbon technologies not because they commit to lowering emissions, but because they will find it profitable. So unfortunately, these expectations were premature. Indeed, we do have technological progress, and indeed renewables and other low-carbon technologies become cheaper somewhat, but the progress has not been as fast and as successful as many people hoped some 20 years ago. So this is the second reason why the ideology of unilateral abatement, providing a good example, leadership, and so on, is not a successful strategy.
But investing in energy efficiency does have economic benefits: job creation, infrastructure, renewal, etc. Maybe positive effects of energy efficiency improvements can be an incentive for the rest of the world.
Yeah, we hoped that there would be such a phenomenon. And in economics jargon, we call it co-benefits. That is, benefits is the benefits of carbon dioxide emission decline, and co-benefits are the benefits which accompany these steps. Like, for instance, if we burn less coal, we may also have lower emission of particulate matter or something which is of immediate interest and immediate concern to some policy makers, not only in Europe but also in China. So a couple of years ago, together with my PhD student, we made a survey of these co-benefits, both in Poland and elsewhere in the world, including China, for instance. And it turns out that these co-benefits are too small to motivate the big emitters like the Chinese or Indians or Brazilians to adopt climate protection measures to the extent we would like them to adopt. So indeed, co-benefits do help, but they cannot solve the problem. So unless, once again, unless we reach a global agreement with absolute emission limits, we will not protect the global climate.
But I mean, Poland has invested quite heavily in improving energy efficiency, in upgrading old buildings, old energy production infrastructures, etc. And based on the ODEC scale results, Poland's achieved quite a lot in terms of energy efficiency. You're an economist, maybe you can comment on this?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to downplay the effects of Polish and other European efforts to invest in energy efficiency and stuff like that. But this has nothing to do with climate protection. So we improve energy efficiency, and that's very good. And indeed, as an economist, I can calculate the direct economic benefits and indirect economic benefits of improved energy efficiency. But then in terms of climate protection, unfortunately, we failed. Because even though we may have some benefits in Poland or elsewhere in Europe, when you think about the predicament of small island states in the Pacific Ocean, or if you think about Maldives or some other places which are exposed to global warming worst, then our clever policy to do something in the field of energy efficiency is not sufficient, simply. So it's very good. It's beneficial for the Polish economy, and it is commendable. But this does not solve the problem of climate protection. It may solve some local economic problems, including job creation, including limiting so-called traditional pollution, which is not greenhouse gas emissions, but something like sulfur dioxide or particulate matter or volatile organic compounds. Okay, so this is commendable and this is beneficial, but energy efficiency alone will not bring us to the global agreement that is needed if we want to, if we take the global climate seriously.
Today, especially today, backloading has been very widely commented. The EU is moving forward with this process of backloading carbon. Do you think this is maybe the solution, both in Europe and also worldwide, carbon trading, increasing carbon prices, etc.?
No, it's not a good solution for the world because of the reasons I have already mentioned. That is, whatever we do with our emissions in Europe doesn't have any good effect on the global carbon dioxide emissions. But for our internal purposes, backloading is, of course, widely debated. It's not a very clever instrument, but its direct impact is, I would say, probably very small. So many analysts are concerned about adverse effects of backloading and stuff. But I don't think it has a very serious direct effect. It's not a good instrument because the philosophy behind backloading is that you increase the price of something when we have a recession, and then since these carbon dioxide permits will be brought back to the market, say 5 years from now or something, so we will decrease the price of them at the time of prosperity. So it is absolutely contradicting to what many macroeconomists would advise in order to control the business cycle. So it's absolutely against the anti-cyclical policy. But once again, let me stress that this is not a big problem because the scale of backloading is not really huge. However, its adverse effect is an indirect one, in my opinion, because first of all, the European ETS program, that is emissions trading scheme, which we hoped should be or could be a pattern or an inspiration for some others, like the Americans or Japanese or Australians, will not serve this purpose. Probably some other emissions trading system will serve as an inspiration or as a platform for a future trade. And one of the reasons that our program cannot be considered a good example is that we have too much of administrative manipulation in the prices. So when in environmental economics textbooks emissions trading mechanisms were analyzed, well, they were analyzed for more than 20 years now, maybe 40 years. It was stressed all the time that the less we administratively manipulate with the system, the better. And this is absolutely contrary to what we have been doing in Europe. The ETS has been under constant administrative supervision. And the second reason why the backloading is not a good instrument or a good idea is that it creates an impression that we do something, that we do the backloading in order to vitalize the renewables or to vitalize something else. So we create an impression that something is going on. And the more we pretend that something is going on, the more we postpone the moment to abandon the Berlin Mandate, and the sooner we abandon the Berlin Mandate, the better. So I don't like the idea of backloading because it creates an impression that we have been doing something, and maybe let's wait a couple of more years, and the rest of the world will be inspired by what we are doing. This impression. Which is created sometimes in Europe by taking some spectacular steps, simply postpones the abandonment of the Berlin Mandate. So that is why I see this as an obstacle to climate protection rather than something that may help the climate protection.
The Polish position has been quite against backloading. Poland coming from the poorer part of the EU. As an economist, do you think, can you comment on the economic benefits for the EU and the individual member states of the EU climate and energy policy, the focus on the backloading, the ETS, the focus on energy efficiency? These have been viewed several years ago as ways to grow. Do you think Europe can still grow on this platform?
No, I don't believe that Europe may be successful in the global economy by continuing the old policy or ideology of unilateral abatement and all the instruments which are aimed at doing something locally. It may be the case that some countries may may benefit from backloading, or they may benefit from some of the energy policies of the European Union. But once again, I am concerned not so much about whether the Polish economy is successful or not. I am concerned here, as an environmental economist, I am concerned about the climate protection. So whatever we do under the heading of the policy of or ideology of unilateral abatement, it may be beneficial for one or another economy locally, but in terms of climate protection, it's not successful at all. And I appreciate the position of the Polish government, which was against the backloading, although I do not necessarily share the argument, because the argument of the Polish government has been that backloading may be detrimental for the Polish economy or for specific sectors. And this may be true or this may not be true. I am not very well informed to judge whether this argument is good or bad. However, it is for sure it is irrelevant for the climate protection. So whether the Polish economy will suffer or will benefit from backloading, it is absolutely irrelevant for the climate protection. For climate protection, once again, what is relevant is to limit carbon dioxide emissions globally. And the success or the failure of the Polish economy doesn't have any impact on the global carbon dioxide emissions. So moreover, some analysts say that for the Polish Minister of Finance, backloading may not be a bad solution. So even though it is by many analysts, it's considered a policy which is detrimental to the Polish coal mining sector. Some other analysts argue that for the Minister of Finance in Poland specifically, it may be beneficial. So I am not a particular fan of this discussion of backloading in the light of whether it does or it does not provide benefits for a given economy, because I am concerned once again with the global climate protection, not so much with the prosperity of an economy of a single country.
But Europe has been very actively limiting or trying to limit its CO2. I mean, Poland, even though its economy has doubled since 1990, it's achieved quite substantial CO2 emission reductions. Many countries are increasing their the share of renewables, trying to limit their CO2 production. Do you think this is actually effective, given that the biggest polluters are actually increasing exponentially compared to what Europe is undergoing?
Yeah, but talking about major polluters, let's not forget about Germany, for instance. Germany is considered a leading country in terms of good environmental policies. But when you look at the German carbon dioxide emissions, they have been growing over the last year or so as a result of closure of German nuclear power plants, and the production of electricity was taken by coal-fired plants instead of renewables. But this is once again a minor issue. So indeed, when you compare Poland to some other European economies, there is no other country which can demonstrate such a tremendous progress in energy efficiency and carbon dioxide emissions. So that's true. And this is not just a matter of an economic decline, as some analysts think it is, because I looked into specific energy efficiency indices for specific technologies, like for instance, iron making or cement production or paper and pulp and stuff like that. So probably not many people know that the Polish steel mills now consume less energy per ton of steel produced than in Sweden or in France. So if you asked an average person anywhere in the world, nobody would say that the Polish steel mill is emitting less carbon dioxide and using less energy than Swedish steel mill or a French steel mill. So the point is that indeed the tremendous reduction in the Polish emission of carbon dioxide is not just to be attributed to economic downturn or to abandoning central planning system or whatever. Of course, economic restructuring did help somewhat, but it's not that the carbon dioxide emission reduction came for free. No, it did not come for free because if you look at specific industries like steel mills, for instance, the carbon dioxide emission reduction came as a result of massive dedicated investment effort, not just a matter of economic restructuring so that we have more services and less industry. No. So of course, the fact that we have less industry and more services helps. But even in industry, there has been a tremendous effort undertaken to limit the carbon dioxide emissions.
Well, that's not a very popular idea in Europe. When people think of Poland, they think of coal, they think of lack of dialogue. So what you're saying, in fact, is that that energy efficiency dedicated investments have actually been quite successful in Poland in this regard.
They could have been better, according to many analysts, including myself. The Polish economy could have done even better in terms of energy efficiency, but I would not like to downplay the energy efficiency, and I would say that despite what many analysts outside Poland claim, there has been a tremendous effort to improve energy efficiency in Poland, and these efforts should continue, despite the failure to protect the global climate, because energy efficiency is good for the economy as such, irrespective of whether it does or it doesn't help much in terms of climate protection. So energy efficiency should be promoted anyway.
How do you see this as an international process? How much of this should be kind of left to the member states or to the different parties of international agreements, and how much should these be binding targets for example, increasing energy efficiency by a certain percent written in international treaties?
So you are alluding to the fact that we have the 2020 package, which means that by the year 2020, all the European countries should emit less carbon dioxide by 20%, should increase energy efficiency by 20%, and should increase the share of renewables to 20%. I think the 2020 policy has some justification, and it's a good inspiration for member countries to look for these improvements. However, for the future, I would hesitate to think of sharpening these or tightening these targets, like for instance 30 instead of 20, because okay, for one or another economy it may be beneficial, but once again, if we are concerned about the climate protection, not economic benefits for a given country, then we should look for a global carbon dioxide emission agreement rather than imposing some binding targets unilaterally for a small group of countries. Because we are a small group of countries, unfortunately. No matter what we feel about Europe, Europe accounts for a small fraction of the global economy, unfortunately.
But what position does Europe have on the global negotiations, basically? We've talked about leading by example, but maybe Europe can be a voice as a global negotiator, basically, to get the other parties to participate in an inclusive.
Yes, well, I happen to teach game theory at the University of Warsaw, and one of the strategies that I let my students practice and understand is that when you negotiate, you should not make open your negotiating position for whomever you negotiate with, because sometimes I have an impression that the negotiating position of the European Union for some analysts would be like the following one: I am going to do something no matter what you do. So what is your negotiating position? No, if you disclose your negotiating position, that is in particular, you are saying, you keep saying to your negotiators that no matter what they will do, I will do what they want me to do. So this is a mistake, and you should not negotiate like that. So, being more specific about negotiating position of the European Union, I am not quite aware of what the negotiating position of the European Union is at the moment, because this is the European Commission which defines and then defends a negotiating mandate. But I am aware that some NGOs or some governments even would like Europe to make it clear upfront to the rest of the world that no matter what they will do, we will do something. And this is an absolute mistake. You can't do it. You can't commit yourself to anything at the time of the negotiations, because if you commit yourself to something, then you don't have to negotiate anything, because the other party you are negotiating with knows that no matter what, you are going to do what they would like you to do. So they don't have to take any commitments, they don't have to promise anything, because they know that you will do no matter what. So coming back to the negotiating position of the European Union, I would say that there must be some negotiating position, but no a priori commitments make sense to announce or to make it public at the time of negotiations.
But I mean, it's probably very difficult for the European Commission to present a single position, given the differences in positions of all the member states. I mean, the EU is a lot bigger than it was 15 years ago, and as many countries, there are many positions. Maybe how do you see the process of the European position? Maybe this is somewhere where the EU should put more efforts into kind of to make this process more inclusive than maybe it has been so far.
Yeah, of course, it is possible to improve the internal negotiations technique within the European Union, so that the position of the European Union of the European Commission better reflects the interests and the positions of all the member countries. So this is one thing. But on the other hand, it is not a good negotiating policy to commit yourself to anything before your rivals or before your competitors or before the other parties you negotiate with disclose their positions. So unfortunately, many times I see when my European colleagues would like to inspire the European Commission or inspire member country governments to do something, to provide a good example. And I say that within the framework of international negotiations, this is not a clever idea to commit a priori before the negotiations or at the time of negotiations. You should not be very specific about what you are going to do, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So I would prefer that the negotiating position of the European Commission be that we can do something. We may do something if you do something else, but it would be very unclever to declare that no matter what you do, we will do something. This is a very bad negotiating strategy.
Okay, maybe coming back to Poland a little bit. You've mentioned that you've looked in detail at steel mills, at energy efficiency investment. What about in energy production, energy, coal power plants, etc.? Has there been progress in this area in terms of energy efficiency?
There has been progress as well, but still the electricity power plants in Poland have the so-called energy conversion efficiency, which is too low, and they should be modernized. They should invest quite aggressively and quite heavily in improving energy efficiency. However, the point is that many electricity firms hesitate to do anything with the coal-fired power plants because they are afraid that maybe the coal combustion will be subject to more stringent regulations in the future, so they will lose all the money, whatever they spent on improving energy efficiency. So I would say that, of course, the domestic electricity production sector in Poland can be made much more efficient. However, I see the main obstacle not so much in the slow pace of investment process or investment decisions at the side of the Polish investors, but I see a huge uncertainty caused by the fact that investors are afraid of being subject to much more stringent regulations in the future, which prevents them from doing anything. Well, so they are doing something. They are progressing, but I would like them to invest much more heavily and much more aggressively in improving the electricity production in Poland.
Well, I mean, I've read quite a number of opinions that this is one of the problems for the business side, that the uncertainty at the European level causes uncertainty for business, and when you decide to invest in a power plant, it's not a 1-year process. It takes 5, 7, 10 years maybe. So what is the role of the EU and governments to facilitate these in programs to invest and to improve energy efficiency and to reduce CO2 emissions?
That's a very difficult question. I think that the role of governments, and especially the role of the European Commission, is to reduce uncertainty rather than increase uncertainty. By reducing uncertainty, you may motivate or stimulate investors to do something. When the uncertainty is increased, then investors are less likely to invest in whatever. And unfortunately, the more administrative decisions your governments do, the worse for the certainty. So the uncertainty increases, and investors are afraid of investing anywhere because they are afraid that they will be subject to more stringent regulations in the future. So from that point of view, many analysts say that European economies are subject to excessive administrative regulation, unlike in some other places in the world, where businesses are less are subject to less strict administrative control. So I am afraid that if you want to improve things, improving energy efficiency and making climate protection more effective, we don't need more administrative oversight, but we probably need less administrative oversight, and we should look and learn from market stimuli. And according to what I read recently, there is a tremendous technological progress in many energy efficiency fields, including new renewables and stuff like that. And unfortunately, our policies are not really open to this technological progress. They are preoccupied with certain specific technologies and with the promotion of specific sectors or specific plants or specific industries, and we cannot really benefit from the fact that despite what we do in certain sectors, in other sectors there is a tremendous technological progress, and it would be a good idea to utilize this unpredicted technological progress in energy efficiency and in renewables. So we are so much attached to traditional methods of improving energy efficiency, and we are so much attached to traditional renewables and traditional technologies that we often overlook that something interesting is going on despite what we do, and probably even we do not help quite much to quite a lot to improving these other technologies, simply because they are not predicted, they are not known for administrators very well. And
can you maybe give some examples? Because when people think renewables, they think wind farms, tidal panels, maybe.
Yeah, so windmills and photovoltaics are very well known and studied in Europe, and we have a number of policies which are aimed at those renewable energy technologies. But unfortunately, they are fairly expensive. And one of the reasons that they are still expensive is that we offer them very generous subsidies. So if you are an entrepreneur and if you have a prospect of receiving a generous subsidy, then of course you don't put too much effort into bringing your costs down. So the fact that in Europe we promote traditional renewables like windmills and photovoltaics, and of course they are very good, and they deserve to be to play a role in the energy mix in the future, but they are not the only technologies available.
Well, there also is the problem of different amounts of funds that different countries can invest in subsidizing or in promoting energy efficiency. From what you are saying, I understand that basically the governments and policymakers should kind of think outside of the box and try to find cheaper and more accessible solutions which already exist, rather than promoting the narrow industries and sectors that they have been promoting for many years. Have you seen any examples of this in Europe, where this kind of out-of-the-box thinking has produced real results in terms of energy efficiency and CO2 reductions?
Well, it's too early, because until the middle of the previous decade, until 2005 or 6, many European governments did promote traditional renewables, like the Danish government or the German government. And the Danish government is certainly much richer than the Polish government. It has a much more spectacular budget than the Polish government has. But even the Danish government came to the conclusion in 2005, I think, or 2006, that they spent too much on promoting renewables, and the Danish government withdrew from their traditional support policies. So if these policies are too expensive for such a wealthy government like the Danish government, they surely are too expensive for less wealthy governments than the Danish government. So in Poland, in other countries, there have been discussions on how to promote renewables, and an important discussion, or an interesting discussion, is whether to promote so-called feed-in tariffs, or whether to do the energy efficiency policy and promotion of renewables by so-called green certificates or white certificates, or some other certificates. And one argument for feed-in tariffs is that they reduce uncertainty for the investors. That's true, but this doesn't mean that they are costless. Of course, it would be very good to have a feed-in tariff, provided that you have a very abundant budget. But in most European countries, you don't have such abundant budgets. And therefore, even though feed-in tariffs, for instance, are superior with respect to green certificates in terms of reducing uncertainty, they are not so enthusiastically promoted anymore, even by wealthy governments, like in Germany or in Denmark. So there is a tremendous field for inventing clever and cost-effective policies in order to promote renewables. Not the renewables that we have known of, but renewables that we may not be quite aware of, which do not exist in our administrative agendas.
Okay. Well, I think I would like to thank you very much for your time and all the things you've said. Clearly, this is a very contentious issue, and it's very widely debated, and it provokes a lot of controversy and a lot of different positions. I think from what you are saying, I think it's quite clear that a lot of the discussion in this field is still preoccupied with national interest and member state interests and economic interests, kind of forgetting about the overall issue of climate protection and solving the climate problem. So I think I think in those terms your view may not actually be very. People watching us might not think that this is a traditional view in Poland, but I understand that this is a view shared by many economists and many analysts in Poland that like Poland share a concern for the environment, but at the same time we understand that there is a great deal of emphasis to not to overburden economies and to find a balance between commitments and protection of the climate, and also to protect the development and jobs, etc. So I've been watching. There's been quite a lot of traffic about this. Today is a very busy day in terms of backloading discussion online as well. So I will not take up any more of your time. I know you are very busy. I would like to thank you very much again for taking the time. I would like to thank our viewers and Twitter followers who've been active, and I would like to invite everybody to follow our campaign, to follow us. We've just had two stakeholder events in Berlin and Brussels. We will have more events in the coming weeks and months, yes, and so all the relevant information will be on our website. This debate has been recorded. It will be posted on our website. For those of you who may have missed it, you will be able to watch this again. And again, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And thank you to all our viewers.
Thank you.